program called Art as Radical Practice, Black Women's Creative Expression as Social Change. Sounds good to you? So I want to introduce our panelists, and one of my most exciting parts of agreeing to do this is that I have met them all in my journey as a youth organizer and as an artist myself. I have watched these women do amazing things across the Bay Area. So I will introduce them one by one, starting with Aya de León, who is Aya is the former program director of the Bay Area Book Festival and led the effort to prioritize both diversity and community organizing. She is the current Poet Laureate of Berkeley and has been the director of June Jordan's Poetry for the People at UC Berkeley, where she continues to teach creative writing. She is the award-winning author of 10 novels, hello, at the intersection of race, gender, class, sexuality, and climate justice. Y'all just gotta clap it up for that. Her words have appeared in the New York Times, Harper Bazaar, The Guardian UK, The Best American Mystery and Suspense, and on Deaf Poetry. She is an organizer for climate justice with the Black Hive at the Movement for Black Lives, an active member of the AFT Local 1474 Union, and a dues-paying member of the Working Families Party. Her new Bay Area cultural projects include Formation, a monthly gathering for intergenerational community organizing through the arts that includes freedom signing, a high school hip-hop dance party, spoken word, acoustic music, all ages DJ dance, hello, games, and art at La Peña Cultural Center here in Berkeley. So if you can, please come and sing, dance, and play as they build community, resistance in these challenging times. Please give a round of applause to her. We also have Kat Brooks, an award-winning playwright, actress, activist, organizer who confronts police violence, racial injustice, and incarceration through theater. I don't know that that gets enough of a summary of all that my sister does. But she is a resident playwright at the Lower Bottom Playaz and host of Law and Disorder on KPFA. She uses storytelling to inspire change. Please give a round of applause. And last but definitely the most amazing is Ashara Ekundayo, Black feminist, artist, and curator, creates healing spaces rooted in African Diaspora traditions. Yes, yes, and yes. Through photography, public installations, and altar making, she amplifies Black women's voices and explores art power to heal and resist oppression. Please give a round of applause. Such an amazing panel that we have today. So I will kick us off with the first question, which is very simple. Through your art, and you have such amazing contributions, not just only here in the Bay Area, but around the world, what are the ways in which you address race, gender, inequality, and healing? And who would ever like to kick it off?
What up, y'all? How you doing? Okay, for call and response, people. Good afternoon. What a pleasure it is to be here with my friends, my mentor, colleague, artists, badasses, and to be here again at the Bay Area Book Fair Festival, being invited to hold space again to talk about sight and space and artivism and memory work. It's kind of difficult to try to answer a question like that, which is why we all just sat here and looked like, well, you know, there isn't any separation from it. So because I'm a student of the Black Arts Movement and the Black Power Movement, the Combahee, River Collective, because I'm a student of these sites and spaces of Black radical thought and the Black intelligentsia, honestly, of the past, of this contemporary time, and definitely of the future as we move through these cycles of creativity. I'm thinking about Malcolm X as we commemorate his centennial this year, and the work that he as an artist, and a cultural worker, as a photographer, and a cultural worker, when he was assassinated, there was this catalytic action between the Black arts movement and the Black power movement, and the civil rights movement that really solidified and codified that Black life and Black death cannot be separated from the political understanding of art, that art has to be at the center of this work. And so all of the work that I do as an independent curator, as a maker, an archivist, as a mentor, as a student, is not separate from that reality. So I'm here in this body at this moment, having this breath with you all. Here we are together, and we have to lean in and pour into each other and be able to support, I think, the power that is, cyclical, that we are holding together, the centrifugal force of leaning into each other's energies to continue that work. And so there is no separation from whether or not it's curatorial work or making work or research work in my practice.
That is a big question. I thought I'd have it together by the time you were done, but here we are. Off topic goes. So I think I'm gonna just pick up where Ashara sort of left off and talk about there is no separation, right? The political is personal, personal is political, and art is at the center of all of those things. I talk a lot about the fact that there is no revolution without art, and that art makes revolution, right? Part of why when you see countries going in the direction that this country is going, the first folks that they come after are the storytellers, are the music makers, are the painters, right? Are the poets who tell the truth through our art, right? And it's about truth telling, and it's also about artists help us see the world that we want to be in that we're not there yet, right? So I'll take a current catchphrase, right? Reimagine public safety, right? A lot of us can't imagine a world without cages, right? A world where somebody does something against a social order and we have another pathway for them besides a cage and punishment and death, right? It's hard to imagine that because of the way we're bombarded with messages that say that this is the only way. Artists, right, can write plays about a cage-free world. They can write songs about a cage-free world. That makes us dangerous. Artists also have the ability to have conversations with you, right, with the masses, with the people, that are oftentimes more intimate than maybe we get when we're outside. So I say a lot, right, not everybody wants to come on 14th and Broadway and hear Cat Burke scream, "Fuck the police." Right? So for some folks, that's a lot. I know you do. I know you do. And I know some of you do too. But not everybody, believe it or not everybody enjoys that practice. I love it, but to each their own. But if I can get you inside of a 99-seat black box theater, and you're stuck there basically because most people are too polite to get up and leave, even if they realize you're like, shit, this is not what I signed up for. Especially a 99-seat theater, right? Because everybody's gonna watch you leave. So you're stuck. You're stuck, and we can have this intimate conversation, right? So with my one-woman show, Tasha, for example, right? It's 11 characters in 65 minutes to tell the story of this woman who was tased to death in the middle of a mental health crisis in a jail in Fairfax, Virginia. Now we're having a conversation about state terror in a very different way, right? And so my job as an artist is to incite you, to ignite you into action. Now the flip side of that is, if you were so traumatized, and we can maybe talk about this later, if you're so traumatized by what you have just seen that you never want to talk about it again, then on the flip side, I haven't done my job. And so one of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately is healing justice as a practice inside of the arts, because for Black folks, brown folks, indigenous folks, we spend the majority of our time writing about our trauma, directing our trauma, acting our trauma, watching our trauma, right? And then we're expected to go out in the world and function. And I can tell you, after doing Tasha for 5 years on top of the work I do that's not a sustainable practice for artists of color. And then just very, so that's broadly. Specifically, I'll say that my work focuses on telling the stories of Black women and girls that are either often told by people that are not Black, or we are disappeared from the conversation altogether. So that's sort of my charge that's left in.
Yes, give it up for that. I love this question, and I love both of the answers that you all have given thus far. And the thing that I would add is, thinking about race and gender and art, and for me also thinking a bunch about climate, right? Those are some of the things I've been thinking about where they intersect with class and nation and all the things. And for me as a novelist and a storyteller, I have been obsessed for about the past decade with writing stories where we win. I write about women of African heritage. I want to write the stories where we win, right? Because here in the world, we are not always winning. But I want us to be able to lean into that imagination of winning as a way of practicing for victory. And for a while I was when I was writing a lot in the climate space, I was super mad because most of what gets called climate fiction or cli-fi are these dystopias that take place a little bit in the future after we've really messed up. And so ultimately climate fiction has been a literature of failure. It's been a literature that presupposes we will fail in the here and now to address the things that need to get addressed. And I was working in 2024 about trying to write a book of the big win. What would it look like to have the big win in climate where we really decided to get off fossil fuels? And that was that's what I was trying to write into. And then there was the election, and I was like, okay, so I say I'm trying to write contemporary realistic books, and it just forced me to look at, I'm writing into a neoliberal reality, and now we have a different reality, right? So I've been in a minor creative existential crisis in terms of how do I reorient to what winning looks like now? And I'm not ready to go full Octavia Butler and be winning just looks like our small band survives, right? I'm not ready for that yet, but I'm trying to figure out what is the biggest picture of winning that I can imagine that feels relevant to now. And I'm not sure yet, because I'm still sort of digesting that. But I think for me that, that question of storytelling and imagining victory. And also, I'm not interested in writing something, just utopian and sentimental that doesn't actually take into account the real trauma that we're up against, right? So for me, the work of being a novelist is how do we lean into how difficult and gritty and traumatic it is and imagine a transformation that feels fought for and grounded in the possibility of transformation, not just and then she married the billionaire and he fixed it, or whatever these, and then, or whatever, she got superpowers. I would love that. I would love the superpowers, but that's not gonna be something that people can go home and say, all right, I'm gonna implement that at home, right? So that's why I'm so obsessed with collective action, right? Because novels are so much about one woman, one man's quest, right? But we know that in reality, it's collective action that creates change. So I'm trying to write into that, and I'm still figuring out what that looks like in our new reality. But the only thing I can tell you is that collective action is still the thing that we need.
Absolutely. Each of you have centered the idea of how being a woman, being an artist, being an organizer and an activist is not separate. It's not a compartmentalized pretty bow of life, right? And we're at this amazing intersection, and I say amazing with the fullest sarcasm of possibilities, in this country where there are many who believe that it is not possible to stop this authoritarian takeover, and there are many who believe that it is. How do you see art as a tool in organizing to really inspire folks to action? not easy questions.
No, when has art not been the organizing technology? It has always been the organizing technology. And those of us who, let's say those of us who have been here before and we know that we've been here before, those of us who know that we have come to do a particular kind of work in this time and who are doing it, know that we survive. We know that we win because we've done it before. And the culture has always been the cure. It's always been, as I said, the organizing technology. I think something that, I remember growing up, in the late 60s and watching archival footage, right? Watching here's this march on Washington, and it's 16 millimeter, black and white, and my parents were there, and then we get, to this year, and we're like, what are the messages that young people have through art, through culture, that help bolster their curiosity and their courage? And I think it is also a place where it's important for us to lean into the sonic utterings that are being offered to community right now through, contemporary musicians and poets. So I'm thinking Aja Monet, I'm thinking Kendrick Lamar, who I saw the other night. I'm thinking India Irie, on her Instagram, these chants that she's offering us lately. And just the history and the legacy, living and creating in the wake of Amiri Baraka, in the wake of Jim Jordan, in the wake of John Coltrane, Alice Coltrane, like these songs, sounds, moans, and lyrics that say we gonna be all right. Because we know that we've done this and won before. I think there's a particular place for composition, like new ways of piecing together, maybe it's the dance with the poem, with the theater piece, and the zine. All of that goes together. Maybe there's new ways of packaging it, but I'll stop there. I want to hear what you all have to say about this too.
So you said it facetiously that we were at this intersection of possibility. We are absolutely at the intersection of possibility, right? We can choose to continue to be cute about our activism. I was talking about this the other night, right? Like we can choose to continue to come to events, that are political in nature, go stand on a corner and scream, and then go home and post the pictures of you doing such things. We can do that, it's fine. Or we can get about the business, right, of liberation. And one thing that I know from 20 plus years of being an organizer is that it's when our backs are against the wall that people fight the hardest. Part of why we ended up in a country with the fascists for president is because white supremacy is gasping for air, and that is their last breath. Our job is to put our knee on the chest and our hands on their nose and their mouth and finish the job, right? And art is a tool to finish the job. It's a tool that starts the job, sustains the job, and it's a tool to finish the job. Art brings people into movement, right? So I'm sure most of the folks in here remember 2009, Megan Oscar Grant. The third was murdered on the Fruitvale Art Platform, January 1st, 2009. Sparking the last 15 years, the longest period of sustained time with a focus on state terror in the history of this country. Yeah, and has led to some of the largest global uprisings about state terror in the history of ever. For Oscar, right, for those who remember, right, we were like, I don't know, we've been in the streets for a hot minute and we're doing a pretty good job at communications, and all of a sudden, there were murals, there were songs, there was street theater, right? Like the movement had a soundtrack, right? Both audio, visual, material, it had a soundtrack. And that not only brought the young people in, but it sustained all of us to keep pushing as we were getting shit kicked out of us by OPD and the sheriffs and the rest of the alphabet soup that flew from Washington to put down that rebellion. And one of my favorite moments ever where I was like, I'll never forget this. So that was also the time of Arab Spring, which also had a cultural element to it, right? And they were also writing songs and drawing pictures and doing poetry, right? And they were all out in the square, and there were signs with Oakland art on it that said, "I am Oscar Grant." That's the power, right? That's the power. That photo of Oscar, which is everybody knows now the one I'm talking about, being held by other freedom fighters all the way across the world, right? That is the power of art. I think the other things that art does, right, is it allows us to have coded conversations, right? Because not all of our business needs to be, not all of that's, we keep making that mistake, because everyone's like, look what I'm doing, stop doing that. We can have coded conversations with art, right? There's things that someone can put in a hip hop song or subliminally in a play, and if you know, you know, right? Art allows us to put out calls to action, right? Yes, we can lament, now go do. Artists inspire, right? You have an artist that you are passionate about, or you appreciate, and you follow their work. If they tell you, right, sensibly, right, that to go do something, often we will go do that thing, right? Movement oftentimes makes the mistake of bringing the artist in last. So they'll do a thing like we'll call an action on 14th and Broadway, and we have it all planned out, and then we call the artist and say, oh, and can you come spit a piece? Wrong answer. No, the artists need to be at the table from jump, right? Because we're all trying to figure out how to have as many conversations at the same time with the masses that are gonna show up to make sure that each of those roads, one of those roads hits you, right? In the place where your heart is open to being hit.
Oh my God, I love, yes, all of that. And in particular, I really appreciate that piece that you just said, Kat, because that was always, you know, I've been in this game like 30 years now, right? And so I was out there as a progressive artist, a lefty artist, a black feminist artist, and the movement would do something that was really important, and it would always be like, oh, yeah, come spit a piece. And then it would be like 90% speeches, and then they'd bring in the one spoken word artist, be like, rah, 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 just to make it a little more, you know, palatable. But the thing that I've been, and here's the thing, the movement heads can just listen to 3 hours of speeches, right? But that's a very small percentage of what is needed to actually build a movement. We need to have folks who are, you know, who have different percentages of capacity to just listen to political content, right? And so one of the things that I've been working on in this era, right, thinking about what is needed in this era, what is needed in this era is much more joy, right? So I've been thinking about and trying to build this ongoing intergenerational organizing project as the Poet Laureate here in Berkeley called Formation, right? And my formula is 90% booty shaking, 10% speeches, right? That's what I'm trying to figure out, because the speeches need to be there. Because the other thing is like, so my critique after 30 years, right, my critique of the movement is you and others are getting artists to the table from the beginning. But a lot of the time it's like wonky with a little bit of flavor, you know, sprinkled on top. And that's not sustainable to keep bringing in new people, right? You need something a little more welcoming and palatable. But on the other hand, my critique of artist spaces is that the bar was too low in terms of thinking about themselves as activist spaces, right? Because people feel like, yeah, we really did it because like everybody said F, you know, insert, you know, white president here in their piece. So we really were a political space. And I'm like, messages are wonderful, but messages aren't organizing, right? So we need to, the Bay can get a little self-congratulatory about political content in our work. And when we bring people together and there's no takeaway, there's nothing that we're telling people to go home and do. We're not bringing people into any kind of actual form or community or movement. And so to me, I feel like this is the time, like you said, folks' backs are against the wall. We need those creative spaces, but there also has to be organizing, actual organizing that's embedded. So it's both. We need the art fully embedded in the movement space, and we need the movements fully embedded in the artist space. Absolutely.
And I think you all bring up that there is this very uniqueness about the Bay, right? We do things here in ways that, frankly, I haven't seen in other parts of the country. But we also create space. And knowing that you are such a huge curator of space, Ashara, I would love to hear you share. What are the things you're working on now? How are you, in this moment, creating the spaces for folks to gather and also do that amazing connection with the change makers, the organizers, the activists?
Thank you for that question. I want to acknowledge the importance of booty shaking. As you know, useful technology, useful activism, and spiritual practice. And again, no separation between my spiritual life, my spiritual practice, my political practice, my creative and administrative practice as well. Currently, I'm stewarding a collective called Artist as First Responder. And we live here in the Bay Area and then also in Detroit, Michigan. So this bridge building between Oakland and Detroit, which is already there, I'm just kind of like adding some nice bricks to the walk between the spaces. That's, you know, specifically in East Oakland and Deep East Oakland, we have a project space at Liberation Park called the Afro Portals Project Space and Archive. It's 2 retrofitted shipping containers. They live at 73rd and Foothill in that reclaimed space that the Black Cultural Zone CDC now owns. And we invite folks to come be in that space for sound healings, for exhibition, pop-up conversations, and also these global conversations we're having live stream between the African diaspora. So folks in Mexico City, in Brazil, in the Bahamas, in Nigeria, South Africa. So these kinds of activations are part of how we're thinking about site-specific, site-responsive, creative opportunities for us to listen to each other, learn from each other, and to also create space for the organizing to unfold. So, you know, there are these opportunities that we're also starting to lean more into in regards to activating and accessing the archives and the stories of the people who live in these communities, but particularly Black people, people of the African diaspora, and, you know, with a centering of Black women in film, living and dying and labor, honestly. So this opportunity for us to continue to make space for those of us who time travel. The 3 of us are time travelers. We move across this planet and, you know, through these universes simultaneously and have these simultaneous lives where we are able to tap into information that our other selves are bringing to us. That might sound a little sci-fi-ish, but I don't find it that way. I find it very real. That those of us know that we are having these simultaneous experiences and are communicating across the veil around that. So there are places where space making, space keeping happens. And, you know, right now I'm leaning into the work that we're doing in East Oakland with the East Side Arts Alliance, with the Black Cultural Zone, and then in Detroit, Michigan, with some other new partners that we'll start to talk about later. But this importance of memory work through archive work, whether that be, you know, the archive of just your family who was displaced from a community or from a place, or if it is the archive of ephemera that you've kept from every concert that you've ever been to in the Bay Area or Detroit, or if it's the archive of your grandmother, you know, and a story that she told and you found a photo and now there's another piece of paper and it takes you down the road. That space reality is also very important in this organizing work. And I think there's a particular way in which Black women tell stories, a particular way in which we offer and open the portal for information to flow, whether that be through the secret prayers that we get up in the morning and offer to community before the babies get up, or the late night booty shaking on the dance floor. It is all prayer, it is all sacred, it is all in service to our revolution.
Yes. Kat, you are at the crossroads of so many conversations around police terror and accountability, and how you combine your art and your being in those amazing ways. What are you working on now that helps to amplify the need for accountability here in the Bay Area, but also the need for support to families who are experiencing and living through that police terror?
I'm guessing the question is what I'm working on artistically that does that. My artist life right now is actually very focused on telling stories of Black women and girls, and it's at the intersection of Black bodies and sex work. I was born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada, and the way I say this is, you know that game, Two Truths and a Lie? You say two truths and you say one lie. And so I always play that game, and I say, when I was in college, I used to drive working girls for a living. Everybody assumes that's a lie. Very much the truth. So that's what I'm working on right now, after spending almost a decade telling the story of Natasha McKenna, which I already went through before. That said, one of the things that AP, so I don't think I said this, I'm the executive director and co-founder of an organization called the Anti-Police Terror Project, and we've been around for 15 years. And we work with families who've lost their loved ones to state violence. We work with communities that are in the process of trying to heal and or move forward and through, right? And we have to remember that most of the folks that engage with state terror survive that terror, right? The folks that die are actually the smallest percentage of the equation, right? It's the folks that are left behind, our community members, et cetera. And so we've got folks that are walking around with severe and intense trauma. And when APTV was first born, it was like fight, yeah? And but they've got more guns and tanks and things than we do. So that can only be a piece of the equation, right? And there's only a small segment of us that are engaged in that particular kind of fight. And so for us, very early on, the question became about, like, how are we going to draw the rest of you all into the conversation? And so similarly, that artists are an afterthought when it comes to organizing. Storytelling and communications is often an afterthought to the organizing, right? And again, that's a mistake. We have to have that at the center of the conversation. And we have to figure out how to stop talking to ourselves, because we are not going to win by ourselves. We actually have to figure out how to talk to Middle America, right? How do we talk to Middle America? Because most people are good people. I do believe that most people do not think that a 14-year-old Black boy should be shot in the head unarmed for no fucking reason. Like, most people have a problem with that, right? But it's how you tell the story. It's how you craft the words. It's how you infuse the words in a way that is honorable, right? And you're not compromising your values. And like, if I'm talking to Ashara about policing, I'm gonna do that very differently, right? Than when I'm trying to talk to Middle America. And so we use storytelling, right? And truth-telling. On Thursday night, I was hosting this other event, and I was talking about the power of truth-telling. And that's what this moment is about. It's about telling the truth. And you tell that truth in a play, or you tell that truth in a poem, or you tell that truth in a speech, or you tell that truth in a novel, or a short story, right? We've got to be telling the truth. And so we use the power of narrative to uplift the stories. Very early on in APTP's birth, right? You all know they kill somebody, and then the news says, a suspect was shot today on the corner of 26th and Adeline. In 1912, the suspect stole a lollipop from a 7-Eleven. The power of that storytelling is that they've managed to connect something that happened, so long ago that it had absolutely nothing to do with that particular moment. The cops could not possibly know that this person had stolen a lollipop before, as a way to justify what happened on the corner of 26th and Adeline, right? And the word suspect allows you to not think of that person as a human being. So very early on, we refused to engage with media that did that. Very early on, we would say things like, nah, his name is Oscar. He has a daughter. His favorite color is blue, right? Using the power of the word to humanize folks, because once you're human in someone's eyes, it's much harder to look away at the torture or the execution of that human. So for us at APTV, it's really about the craft of the word and using that to inspire. And then I think I'd be in trouble if I didn't say we just did, for Poetry Month, we curated poems from the community and put that on Instagram every single day. It's so dope. And figure out how, even inside of our art, to make space and place for that. The last thing that I do want to say, before I pass it on to Ayaz, I think by now, everyone in this room is probably aware that tragically an educator in Oakland was killed because the California Highway Patrol decided to chase another child at rapid speed through narrow streets, violating the chase policies that we have in Oakland, and over a stolen car. And so we called a vigil for Friday night. Last night, Jesus. We called a vigil for Friday night. No, it was 2 nights ago. And I brought art supplies. That's what I brought. I brought a thing full of markers and colored pencils and some paint. We also had candles and we had water and we had other healing modalities. The thing that people gravitated towards was the art. And you just saw people trying to figure out how to process what was happening for them inside. And this horrific act of state violence, because that's what it was, state violence, through creation, right? So art helps you move the trauma through, right? Because trauma gets stuck inside of you, and that's, cancer and rage and all this other stuff. But art is another reason why it has got to be intersectional movement, allows you to move that through, whether you're booty shaking, right? You're singing at the top of your lungs, you're furiously drawing, right? It helps then, because energy doesn't go away, right? It just stays in one form or another, and we want it to move, and that's the job of the art.
So before I ask one more question, just wanted to give you, the audience, the opportunity to think of any questions you may have for the panelists. We'll go through one more. I have a specific question for Aya, but then we'll come to you all in the audience. You speak a lot about creating spaces for folks to center joy. In this moment, why joy? Why, of all the values that we have in this world, and why here in the Bay is joy so important to center?
Well, it's feeling loud. So, I feel like the Bay is really leading. Like the Black Joy Parade is such an, is so incredible. I can't believe it's like the fifth year. So I feel like, because we've also been talking about Black women, and in the tradition of the church, there's this way that joy is understood to be radical. In the church had many, challenges and problematic business, but there's this way that like Black folks understand that joy is a practice, and that folks will say, don't let the enemy steal your joy. And so I think for me, one of the things in this particular time that is so critical has to do with another kind of terror, right? In patriarchy, in white supremacy, in capitalism, there's a lot of terror that people experience in their childhood, right? Childhood is terrifying in patriarchy. Some days are better than others, but it's not, we don't live in a world, and particularly a society, that's safe for young people. And so I think a lot of us have childhood experiences of defeat, whether it's abuse, whether it's neglect, whether it's loss, whether it's just like we wanted to be closer to our parents or caregivers than we could be in capitalism when they were being worked to death, It's like we have these early experiences of defeat where we just didn't have the power to make things happen the way we wanted them to happen. And I believe that we're living in an era where one of the biggest tools that our enemies have is to trigger us into feeling small and helpless, right? And so, and that, you know, and when you feel small and helpless, that's one of the ways that we see people siding with the bully. Like, there are communities that voted in a particular way and you're like, what? How could y'all vote like that with those people who are coming for you? But people will side with the bully if you can trigger them the right way. So, you know, I think that a couple of the tools that I think are so crucial in these times is we have to do our work on our childhood issues so that we're not so easily manipulated into feeling small and helpless. Like, either we need to somehow seek the approval of bullies, or that, like, well, here comes this thing that I can't stop, that I can't, you know, play a role in that's powerful. So I think there's emotional work we have to do. And I think that joy is such an act of resistance. And organizing around joy is such an act of resistance. But in capitalism, folks are always trying to sell us joy, with a little trademark right next to it. And they're trying to sell us something that's supposed to bring us joy that probably won't, that probably will just hook us into needing more and more of that thing, right? So I think it is really radical to take joy and instead of having it be a real consumer moment, have it be a collective community coming together moment where, you know, maybe we're gonna pay a little something to pay the rent for the venue or keep the lights on, but really it's not about money changing hands, it's about us coming together and enjoying ourselves in our traditions of song and dance and spoken word and game playing and art, and, you know, also having folks in the building who are doing community organizing, who are sharing about projects, who are sharing about mutual aid and different kinds of stuff that folks are doing in these times. So I think, you know, joy is irresistible, and folks really can feel the difference between sort of mindless consumeristic joy and joy that is rooted in community and rooted in our traditions. So I think it's just super important. And one of the things I'll say that has been clarifying about these times, you said folks' backs are against the wall in a particular way. Like, you know, y'all know me, people know me, I've been around for a while. Like, I'm not like one of those people who's like, I'm really the American dream, rah rah. But there was some way in neoliberalism that I had this deferred gratification, like, oh, in the future, this is some kind of bigger success, or I don't know, something. My ship will come in. I don't know what it was, but there was something in the future that I was like living into that had me not fully present. And in this particular moment, I feel like I am here now, right? I am here now. I remember in November, December, and the first 19 days of January, I reminded myself every day, I'm not a fan of Joe Biden, but Joe Biden is president today. Let me remember that, right? Where am I now? What is it? I don't want to be living in the panic of what is coming. I want to be preparing for what might be heading my way. That's not the same as living in the panic. I'm not living in the panic. I'm also not living in the fantasy, right, of the success that might be coming, and I'm not living in the panic of the disaster that might be coming. So it's been very powerful. I'm more present than I've ever been in a lot of ways, which is part of what it means to be facing down fascism, right? Facing it down. And you know, and I'm leaning into the joy, but I'm leaning into the joy as organizing, because we do have the power to figure out collectively what will and will not be going down next, but we need to invest in that.
I'm going to add something to your joy affirmation. Is, you know, there's a meme that's like, oh, the world is burning down, or, you know, the government is taking over, or the United States is going to hell, and there are these boots on the ground. It's like there's this dance that is, it's line dancing. It's like it is so black and so brilliant and so beautifully joyous. It is getting in sync together. It is breathing together, moving together, in a cipher together. When you are in sync together, you cannot simultaneously be opposed to each other. Boots on the ground, this line dance, this singing, this cipher that is being created in the midst of, okay, we might, I might have lost my job, my kid got stopped by the police last night, whatever, and we're gonna dance. I insist, you cannot stop Black joy. I insist. And so when you see other folks doing it, those of y'all who have no idea what we're talking about, just get on Instagram or Facebook or any whatever social media and put in boots on the ground and see what happens. Because you have and all I can do is smile and laugh. It makes me want to get up and do it every time. It was like, let me see if I can get that little hustle together. It makes me want to do it too. It's like, because look at them, leaning effortlessly into this breath and this cycle of joy together. That's me. That's my people. We do that.
Can I say one more thing about joy? Who the hell wants to join a movement where everybody's crying all the time?
Nobody!
Nobody wants to be in that movement, right? Like, if you were the face of a movement and all people, I shouldn't talk, but I think all people see me do is scream and yell at people, but I have people around me that smile. You know what I mean? Like, people around me, like, nobody, right? Especially the young folks, right? Like, I hear from my daughter and her friends who's like, I'm not living my life like that, right? You're all mad, you're angry, you're sick, you're tired, you're stressed, you don't want vacation, and we still can't pay the goddamn bill, so what is really happening? You know what I mean? So, and the other thing that movement fails to do that actually art helps us do is we fail to celebrate our victories. We forget to stop and celebrate when we win. And we do win, right? Like, sure, patriarchy's still standing, but it's small and it's incremental, right? We're not, liberation and freedom is not gonna come tomorrow, right? It's a journey, right? To get there. And if we're gonna build movement and sustain it, particularly when we're talking about generations who literally only have a 7-second attention span, 7 seconds. We have to figure out how to infuse some joy and some hope in the midst of that and figure out how we pause and celebrate. Celebrate the fact that Black joy can be destroyed, right? Like, that's something to celebrate. Celebrate that the fact that the George Floyd resolution got passed. Yeah, we're mad about implementation, but the fucking thing got passed, right? Celebrate that new piece of art or work that comes out. Celebrate, take time to breathe and break bread together in the meetings before you just jump into, right, the business of toppling white supremacy. That's big business. You need some food, and you need some breath, and you need some laughter. And also, engaging in joyful practice is a relationship building tool and tactic. Right? And so as someone who was in the trenches consistently for 10 years, I can tell you that I would not have been able to trust the person to my left or the right as the tear gas was flying had we not laughed together. Had we not, right, taken walks and shared personal, intimate details together. Had we not led with our humanity, right? If we don't get that together, we are destined to lose.
Yes, I want to call a memory that maybe you have. It was right after George Floyd was killed on the street, and we watched it. And we were in the streets, and we were downtown in Oakland, California. And the police were coming up against the bodies. And we had a shield build, art shield build, the following weekend, where we actually got shields, like, plywood shields, and went to Liberation Park and we painted them. And we laid them all out on the ground. This was Artists as First Responder with, it was like the Bay Area Builders Collective and some other organizing folk. And APTP, also, put some energy into this. But the next time there was a protest and we saw it on the news, the shields were all colored. They were colored with stars and glitter and sayings and words that says, "We will win." The community had shown up, I'm saying, to make this shield beautiful. So that there was a connection happening between young people who were not going to be on the street, elders who were not going to be on the front line, but they're like, this is the part that I can offer, and then I can give that shield to the activist who's on the front line. And I just remember, and I don't know if you remember it, but it was really special for me to see a shield that I had decorated on that front line and said, this is part of this movement. There is no movement on the planet that is not fueled by the artist. Not one. And so artists show up first in catastrophe and in celebration. That is what we mean when we say artist as first responder. So thank you for those stories so that I could remember that.
Yes. Powerful. Well, we have time for one question. Anyone have over there in the back? Yay. Give her a round of applause for being over.
Hi. I saw a really interesting quote from Lil Nas X on social media recently, where he was saying essentially his opinion is that if he made Montero now, he would I think he said shot in the streets, but essentially saying how much culture has changed in the past 5 years that radical art is not appreciated, and radical Black art especially. Have you experienced that in your practice, and how have you either, how have you fought against that?
That's just not my lived experience. I mean, I think there's greater consequences for making radical Black art, right? I think that we're taking a larger risk when we make radical Black art. I do think that there's a conversation happening right now that I know that me and some other comrades are pushing up against, which is that Black people should go sit down. We had our turn, and this is a bigger time with bigger issues right now, and we keep reminding people that actually not, right? Black folks, we're gonna win this as Black folks lead it. I mean, Kendrick Lamar is radical Black art, and he's selling out, shows all over the world right now. I can't think of a time where radical Black art, white supremacy is really loud right now, and it has been since 2015, right? But it's not like it's a new message. They just happened to slither out from the rock they were hiding under, and they're just saying it, so the rock's not muffling the bullshit. But yeah, that's not my lived experience, and I'm actually finding that young people are gravitating towards radical Black art. They want to tell radical Black stories. They want to tell Black truth, and I actually feel like the last 10 years of being unapologetically Black and radical has opened up space that actually didn't exist prior to the last decade of Black-led liberatory struggle.
I would agree with that. This last decade of blatant radical practice has been, again, a very much a portal opener for so many. And listening to your question, I actually started thinking about abstract art and what abstraction allows and invites. For us, that there are so many stories under the tongue that are being told, and you have to use a part of your mind that allows you to reframe and define for yourself what this message is. Often, the abstract art that is given to us, and I want to say abstract, not only visual art, but dance art, definitely poetry has a lot of abstraction to it. You have to be in a space of freedom and futurism that allows you to download the messages that are possible. But you have to sometimes listen to the person who created the artwork. The story, the radical output is in the story of what this is about. So you might be looking at something that you don't have yet the space or the capacity to take in, but given more information, you realize the impact, of it on your life, or the possibility of impact of it on your life. But I don't see any place as well where the radicalism hasn't always been available to us. I think it's available to us.
Yeah, and I would add, I really appreciate what both of you have said, and I think the only thing that I would add is, there are artistic moments of breakthrough, right, that happen, artistic, cultural, and they're wonderful, but it's also like, what have we built the power to be able to consolidate and maintain? And I think one of the things that I feel like we're in a moment historically of what, like you talked about, backlash, right? Our peoples have been fighting for hundreds of years, and we've actually made a level of progress that is led to this huge backlash. But I think about, in context of Lil Nas X, right? He was an artist of a very particular kind of breakthrough around queer Black masculinity, right? And so, I can only imagine what it would be like to be him and try to figure out how to consolidate, maintain, and move forward. That's a very particular, profound challenge when you're the person who broke through. And I wish June Jordan were alive to have conversations with him. I wish, he could have conversations with some of those folks who integrated schools in the South. Like, what does it mean in that generation? There were a lot of firsts, right? I wish he could be in a certain context of what does it mean to be literally the battering ram that breaks through a particular taboo or a particular barricade. And I can imagine it must be challenging to then kind of have a public life in this era. But I will say, I think, we saw with the uprising of 2020 a particular pretense of what had fully changed, right? And then culturally, we lived through 2022 and 23, and we saw this really big cultural backlash, and then in 2024 we saw this electoral backlash. So it's also not my lived experience. I really resonated, I love that line. And I think that we are looking at, the word I use is disappointment. I think there's a big collective disappointment that a lot of us are looking at for what did it mean to have that level of uprising. And many of us also were skeptical, and maybe less disappointed, but it's been powerful to see this cycle. And progress isn't linear. I feel like progress is more like this, right? And then like we're inching forward, but there's a lot of swooping back, and we're in a swoop back moment.
Yes, thank you all so much. We are right at time, and so I know you have one quick announcement, so I want to give you time and quick announcements if we need to, and then we'll wrap us up.
Okay. So yeah, I've got this project, Formation, our next gathering Saturday, June 21st. Freedom songs led by Black women, free all ages in the afternoon, followed by a high school hip hop dance party. We got spoken word and live music in the evening. It's a laureate reading, so it's me, Dr. Ayodele Nzinga, and a couple of other Bay Area Poets Laureate. We're gonna get down. And then at night with the all ages DJ dance and games and art all day. So I got flyers. I think there's some flyers out front. Come through.
Yeah.
Aya and Aya spitting in the same event.
I know, right?
So my team will yell at me if I don't do this, and y'all should know. So at ABTB, we have a building in the West called the People's House. It's on 9th and Willow, and just as there's no revolution without art, there is no revolution without healing. So we do healing justice as an organizing strategy. The first and third Fridays of every month, we have healing portals. You can come get some body work, foot soaks, reflexology, Reiki, acupuncture. On Mondays, for folks that because a lot of folks are in this moment, overutilizing substances. We've got the NADA protocol developed by the Young Lords and the Black Panther Party in New York. Then you come get the CT interviews followed by a substance utilization group, and a bunch of other trauma-centered healing stuff. Antipoliceterrorproject.org.
This coming Sunday, Artists as First Responder will be hosting an activation at Liberation Park from 12 p.m. until 5 or 6 p.m. And it will be both a conversation with Mexico City and with Brazil in the Gold Portal, and there will be and the artist who will be kind of facilitating these freedom songs and conversations is named Mary Graham. She's a beautiful visual artist and also a vocalist. And then Bush Mama Africa will have a one-day pop-up in the Cosmos Portal from 12 to 6. This happens at Liberation Park in East Oakland at 73rd and Foothill, hosted by the Black Cultural Zone that also has this free Levitt Vibe concert series. So there's all of this beautiful activation musical, there's food, there's drinks, there's vendors, there's sound healing, there's visual art, there's conversation. So that's coming up this coming Saturday. And then on Sunday, there's going to be a celebration welcoming Mayor Lee to Oakland, California through this arts portal, also happening at Liberation Park. So you can go on artistasfirstresponder.com, or you can also check out the Instagram page, Artist as First Responder, to see what we're doing. I want to also acknowledge my son and 2 of my granddaughters who are here today. And my son, Ita he's the lead curator for the Afro Portals project space. And so his daughters, Omolara and Libya, are here visiting, and I'm happy to have my family here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all so much for being on our panel, and thank you, audience, for joining us. Please make sure you donate, as well as fill out your forms on your form. Have a great rest of your day, and enjoy the rest of the festival.